Welcome back and Alive Now. I'm Austin Westfall. This has been an incredibly busy couple of weeks on the Israel-Lebanese border. We've been covering the fact all day today that Israel's military has now said that its troops have begun limited ground raids against Hezbollah targets in the border area of southern Lebanon early on Tuesday, Israel time, as a ground invasion by its troops appeared to be getting underway. The IDF says that the targets are in villages close to the border and posed an immediate threat to communities in northern Israel. It said the Air Force and artillery were supporting ground forces with, quote, precise strikes. Alon Burstein is standing by, as always. Alon, thanks for coming on. So there's a lot going on tonight. We're hearing of the incursion into southern Lebanon. We're hearing of active strikes in Beirut. I've heard of striking in Damascus, Syria as well. There's a lot of angles to come at this. What's the lead for you?
So it's good to see you, Austin. Honestly, there's so much news coming in every minute. There's strikes going on throughout all of Lebanon. You talk about Beirut. There was a strike yesterday in the Sunni section of Beirut rather than the Dahia region, targeting not Hezbollah, actually targeting the Popular Front of the Liberation of Palestine. 3 of their leaders were killed. Leaders of Hamas in Lebanon were killed. Now the IDF has publicly crossed into Lebanon. There were reports that throughout the war, every now and then, tanks would maybe cross the border. Now it's a full-on invasion. The Lebanese army has withdrawn. It has pulled back 5 kilometers. That's about 3 miles, which is also indicating that Israel has communicated to the Lebanese army, this is where we want you to pull back to. This is what's happening. So many things happening at the same time. Honestly, the thing that I am looking at is something that's not in the headlines right now, and that is who is going to be Hassan Nasrallah's successor, because that is largely going to determine how the war, the invasion, the character is going to take. There are several different names that are floating. Hassan Nasrallah was the one who tied Hezbollah to Hamas. He was the one who tied the Lebanese front to what was going on in Gaza. And even as the situation escalated more and more and more, he kept on saying Hezbollah will not accept a diplomatic resolution. Today, Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati said Lebanese army willing to go down south, willing to implement the UN Security Council Resolution 1701. All sides agreed to that except for Hezbollah, but Hezbollah is going to have a new leader soon, probably any day, and that is largely going to determine the trajectory in which things go. So all the developments happening, but actually I'm looking towards that to see where we're going to go.
Yeah, what are the implications? And really, what is Hezbollah's place in this wider Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Houthi story that we've been talking about for nearly a year now? It seems like every time there's any sort of leadership position that we hear about, that person gets eliminated by the IDF. Is that something that the Hezbollah powers that be, whoever that is at this point, is that something that they're considering? Are they going to put a target on whoever takes that position?
They're certainly considering that, but it's important to remember that Hassan Nasrallah was the leader of Hezbollah for 32 years. He himself had fought Israel and had led countless operations against Israel under his auspices. So yes, it is true that right now it appears that the next leader will automatically be targeted by the IDF, but the IDF has not proven over the years. It's not like every time there's a new leader for Hezbollah, they're automatically assassinated. But that is also one of the reasons that we need to think who this next leader is going to be, and possibly in order to save his own life, but also to save his movement, he may find a way to climb down from the tree that Nasrallah climbed up on and try to say, yes, we'll accept if the IDF, or if Israel has international guarantors that Israel is going to enter into negotiations with Hamas, that's good enough for us. Let's have a ceasefire. He may do that to save his own life, as well as to save his movement. In terms of Hezbollah's position within the different array of actors, Hezbollah is the strongest militia in the entire Middle East that is loyal to Iran, right? There's countless militias, dozens, possibly even hundreds smaller militias. The biggest ones are Hezbollah and the Houthis, but we've seen Katib Hezbollah, the Islamic resistance in Iraq. We've seen Palestinian Islamic Jihad, largely funded by Iran. Also, Hamas actually a little bit less. Hamas is allied with Iran, but not quite the same level of proxy. Hezbollah is the one that usually was sort of Iran's ambassador and coordinator to these different militias. Hezbollah is the strongest link to Iran. It's the one that has often brought different militias together under its auspices, and it's the one that is closest to the arena fighting against Israel in order to support Hamas. At the same time, unlike the Houthis, unlike Hamas, Hezbollah has internal politics to consider. There's internal politics in Lebanon. What we've seen throughout the course of the war is that the Lebanese government and the Israeli government have repeatedly accepted diplomatic resolutions that were put forth by France, put forth by the United States. And no one had the capability to force Hezbollah into that. No one wanted Israel to do what it's doing now. And at the same time, the Lebanese army didn't have the capability to enforce such a deal on Hezbollah. Right now, Hezbollah is vastly weakened. It's far from disappeared. Its forces are still very strong. It has a lot of missiles, but its leadership structure, its positioning in Lebanon as the defender of Lebanon, the one that is strong, they've been quite humiliated by the IDF, and their position is weakened. It is possible that at this moment, the Lebanese government will have enough public opinion and popular support to actually try to impose itself on southern Lebanon, come to some sort of deal with Israel. All that depends on what happens with Hezbollah next. Are they going to say, no, fight to the death? If we're going to send what troops we still have down south to fight Israel and engage, village by village? Or is Hezbollah going to try to pull back, reconsolidate itself, and go forth? And a lot of that depends on who the leader is.
People that have been following these past couple weeks might have been reading all these headlines. Nasrallah gone. So many other figureheads of Hezbollah gone. Rocket launchers gone. It's not too much of a stretch to assume that quite a hefty dent has been put into Hezbollah. And you say that it's still quite has a lot of might, and it's still a strong force. What evidence is there out there to support the fact that they are still one of, if not the mightiest militia in the region?
So I'll start from prior to the war. Estimates prior to the war said that Hezbollah had between 130,000 and 150,000 rockets, missiles, long range and medium range, and between 30,000 and 50,000 operatives. That includes fighting operatives as well as intelligence, engineers, etc. Now, they have suffered a lot of blows in the last weeks and even in the last months. Even so, IDF estimates put the number of operatives that have been killed at 1,500 to 2,000. I remind you, out of roughly 30,000. Similarly, they say that most of the rocket arrays have been destroyed, but most of 130,000 still means you could have 20,000 left. 20,000, 30,000, that's still enough when it comes to, remember, the aim of rockets and missiles are not to decimate all of Israel. They're to occasionally manage to have a missile that penetrates the air defenses, lands in Tel Aviv. That's enough for Hezbollah to call a win. So that's why I say, yes, they have suffered a lot, but really the reason that the organization is in complete disarray is that the IDF has very, very methodically actually taken out the leadership structure. And this is something that I have said several times when I've been asked that it wasn't smart to take out Hassan Nasrallah or not. I'm not talking about the moral implications of carrying out strikes in residential areas. That's a different question. But in terms of taking out a decapitation, usually decapitation doesn't work. And the reason is you take out the leader, immediately most of these organizations, especially a well-structured one like Hezbollah, usually take out the leader. There's a second in command waiting there. The IDF and the Mossad seemingly very, very methodically with the pager attack, the walkie-talkie attack, took out the second tier of officers, then the first tier of officers, everyone assuming that Nasrallah himself was untouchable, assuming that he's someone that the IDF will not dare strike at because that'll lead to regional war, and gradually took off, figure by figure by figure, until when he was finally taken out, there actually is complete disarray right now in the leadership. That's why I'm saying, in my opinion, Hezbollah is not retaliated right now because there's actually no one to give the actual order. What is the retaliation? Does Hezbollah want a full-on war right now with Israel? It might. Or does it want to withdraw, lick its wounds, and maybe come back in 6 months, in a year, with something else? So Hezbollah still has a lot of might, not nearly as much as it had at the beginning, but most of its disarray right now is because that leadership decapitation, which right now the organization and Iran are working very hard to try to rebuild. There's some rumors about who might be the successor, but so far nothing confirmed. They're trying to rebuild that, and then we'll see, are they throwing everything they have at this or not?
I want to read the IDF's official statement about what's happening this evening. They say, and they put this out on Twitter, In accordance with the decision of the political echelon a few hours ago, the IDF began limited, localized, and targeted ground raids based on precise intelligence against Hezbollah terrorist targets and infrastructure in southern Lebanon. These targets are located in villages close to the border and pose an immediate threat to Israeli communities in northern Israel. The IDF is operating according to a methodical plan set out by the General Staff and the Northern Command, which IDF soldiers have trained and prepared for in recent months. The Israeli Air Force and IDF artillery are supporting the ground forces with precise strikes on military targets in the area. These operations were approved and carried out in accordance with the decision of the political echelon. Operation Northern Arrows will continue according to the situational assessment and in parallel to combat in Gaza and in other arenas. The IDF is continuing to operate to achieve the goals of the war and is doing everything necessary to defend the citizens of Israel and return the citizens of northern Israel to their homes. This is no surprise to us alone. We know they've been saying for days now that their goal here is to make northern Israel safe as a result of these military efforts. My question has to do with something that you and I have been talking about repeatedly for the past almost year now, which is the unwritten rules of this war. Is what's happening in southern Lebanon tonight something that falls outside the unwritten rules of this war? And is this something that Iran is going to feel like it has to respond to?
So first of all, in terms of breaking the tacit agreements between the sides that you don't escalate beyond this, you don't escalate beyond this, Israel has very, very sort of step by step in the last 2 weeks shown that it is breaking all the previous rules. The operation that was launched in order to assassinate Hassan Nasrallah was actually codenamed by the military New Order. That was the code name that the IDF gave. It's setting a new order as far as it's concerned in the relationship between the IDF and Hezbollah. No more is it, okay, you fire this many rockets and we're only going to retaliate this much. From now on, it's all out. So Israel is certainly reshaping the rules of engagement and what is willing to accept and not accept, which it has accepted for the last 10, 11 months. All of a sudden, it's not willing to accept. At the same time, reading somewhat between the lines there, Israel's also publicly saying again and again, one, even again, it's not saying this explicitly, but it's saying this between the lines. One, it's not on a mission to destroy Hezbollah. It's not going to pretend like it can destroy Hezbollah right now. For that, you would have to take over Lebanon, be there for a good number of years, like we are seeing is going to be shaping up in the Gaza Strip. Probably, I mean, there's no real public plan right now, but in order to destroy the infrastructure of a terror group, you need to actually take over the territory for a long time. Israel's saying, when that's not our mission. Our mission invading Lebanon right now is not that. It's to restore safety and security to northern Israel. It is also again saying using very, very precise targets. It's not launching the same bombing campaign into Lebanon as it did in the Gaza Strip. Israel still signaling that to some extent, these are the rules that we're going to be playing with. We're telling you now, we're not coming in all the way. Like I said, the Lebanese army only pulled back about 3 or 3.5 miles. It's not looking at a full-on invasion of Lebanon like Israel did invade in 1982 and got all the way to Beirut and took over Beirut. So Israel's signaling, while we're breaking the rules that we have established until now, we're still signaling we can have some rules. There can be some sort of game that we play. Within Iran right now, there's an ongoing, to some extent public, and to some sense obviously private, dispute within the leadership what is going to be. On the one hand, Iran feels a need to retaliate. Hezbollah is its baby. It's the one that it groomed. It's the one that it was the forward command of Iran. Iran still promised to retaliate for the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. That happened by now, July 31st. Iran still vowed to retaliate for that assassination that happened in Tehran. And meanwhile, their baby Hezbollah is being pounded again and again. So Iran, there's a lot of pressure within it to retaliate on the one hand. On the other hand, Israel's moves have scared Iran also. Israel has signaled, we're going all out. We're going all out. After Hassan Nasrallah was assassinated, there were reports that the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, was rushed to a safe house because there was fear. Has Israel gone crazy? Has Israel gone crazy? Is it now going to launch a massive strike against Iran? We also saw that same day massive airstrikes being launched against the Houthis. The Houthis also have been launching missiles. They've been terrorizing Israeli ships. What's happened for 10, 11 months? All of a sudden, Israel is signaling new order. So in Iran, there is pressure to retaliate, but they're also, I think, waiting to see what are the reestablished rules of the game, so to speak. What is going to be the extent to which Israel is willing to go with this, and then possibly they will retaliate. My guess is not directly. Iran is probably not going to launch a direct military offensive against Israel like it did back in April. Then it said it was retaliating to what it perceived as a strike against its own territory, which was its consulate in Damascus. Now, Israel never claimed responsibility for the attack against for the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. These attacks have not been on Iran, so chances are we'll see Iran trying to retaliate by carrying out some sort of terror attack, maybe sponsoring a terror attack, something against an Israeli interest or an American interest somewhere else in the world, but unlikely direct military reaction right now. However, if the IDF does carry out an airstrike that attacks, let's say, the Iranian embassy in Lebanon, then Iran may use the opportunity to say, okay, now we'll strike back. But right now, it's still thinking, how does it want to engage with what Israel is terming new order in between Israel and Lebanon?
So this is the last thing I want to hit before we go here. President Biden says that he'd, quote, be comfortable with Israel scrapping this ground operation. Why do the Israelis in the White House see it differently, Alon?
I think there's several different things that are at play. I think President Biden probably is looking at big picture. And, when Israel invaded Lebanon for the first time in 1982, it was defined set. What the cabinet decided was a 48-hour operation that ended up lasting 18 years that Israel occupied southern Lebanon. So I think in Israel, this is being framed, and you read the IDF statement, as a localized, very targeted operation. I think President Biden is probably saying, okay, but we don't know. We don't know how these things spiral, what leads to what, how does it end up happening. And Israel and the United States have bad experiences in Lebanon. They have bad experiences getting stuck in the Lebanese mud. Certainly, as we're coming into winter, who knows how long things are going to continue there. Lebanon's a very hilly and jungle area in the south. So, in that sense, I think he's worried about that escalation. At the same time, he's also worried because the White House has been pressuring Israel and Hamas to find a way to negotiate a ceasefire, to negotiate a hostage exchange, a truce, somehow to bring an end to the war. Right now, what's happening in Lebanon is driving that monumentally further away. The vision of Yahya Sinwar, when October 7th was launched, he called upon the entire region to join the war. He has been waiting for Hezbollah to have no choice but to throw its full weight into the war. And like I said, that may happen. Or if there's all of a sudden some sort of escalation that Israel didn't anticipate, and we see an airstrike in Damascus that, accidentally ends up killing someone that draws Syria and then Iran into the war, that is Hamas's vision. So right now, with this escalation going on in Lebanon, Hamas is not going to be at all pressured to come to a deal. And at the same time in Israel, the news cycle and the pressure has turned much more away from the hostages and the need to come to a hostage deal, and in turn is all focused on Lebanon. I think President Biden is seeing that and seeing his hope for having the negotiators, Qatar, Egypt, and the United States all pressure Israel and Hamas to come to ceasefire. I think he's seeing what's happening in Lebanon is driving that away, plus having potential to escalate into something further. And both those things are making him say, dear God, just stop. Like, just stop and let's dial us back to where this was before. I think that's probably where the disagreement is.
So much happening tonight, Alon. We appreciate you helping us understand it. We always look forward to your daily YouTube uploads as well. Have a good rest of your night.